The century gone by now, so you know you had John Jameson and Son exporting all around the world, shipping all over the globe, so more and more people beginning to enjoy the taste that we're actually going to go and associate with a Jameson whiskey. However, tough times to come, so political, military turmoil would intervene. As a lot of us will know, war broke out around the world, not only once, but twice. Even here in Ireland, we weren't immune to conflict, we had our own. It was known as the 1916 Easter Rising, and due to this distillery's prime location, it was actually used as a fortress during such a rising, with volunteer snipers positioned up top here, up on the roof. Yeah, and despite the tough times, you know, James's generosity prevailed again. So due to the imposition of what was known as martial law, no employee was gaining access to the distillery for 2 weeks, but the wage book archives show everyone was actually paid in full for that 2-week shutdown. So that was very generous there back in the day. And just we think a bit of progress being made, unfortunately it was halted again. So this time we had restrictive tariffs imposed by Britain, but we did also see the knock-on effects of prohibition over in the USA. So what we saw here, American bootleggers labelling their moonshine Irish whiskey, almost to just try and charge that additional price on top. And as you might imagine now, led to a serious damage to James's reputation and a big loss of momentum. So by the time the 1960s rolled around, that Irish whiskey industry had hit what was being called its rock bottom. However, drawing on the spirit, the example of John James's innovative thinking, and the family motto right there, Sine Metu, without fear, the Guardian's whiskey bearing the Jameson name decided it was either going to be time to sink or to swim. And thankfully, they chose to swim. So in 1966, after roughly about 2 centuries of rivalry, Jameson joined up forces with John Power and Son, and the Cork Distillery Company formed what we know here today as the Irish Distillers Group. And they're still operational for us, guys. You know, they're massive here in Ireland today, to be fair to them. So the spirit of Jameson definitely is on Bow Street. Heart now beats in Middleton, County Cork, where the whiskey is primarily distilled, matured to meet the ever-growing global demand. So we're going to revisit Middleton in the taste room. But to be honest with you guys, great location to make fantastic tasting Irish whiskey. And even Jameson whiskey itself, you know, heavily steeped in both tradition and in craft, but the masters and the makers constantly exploring new techniques, new recipes, new ingredients to reflect the expanding taste of today's whiskey drinkers, such as yourselves, such as myself. Because you know what, Jameson, it's always been like a people's story. So it comes back here to the guys on the bottle. We've got the barrowmen. It's also about the makers, the masters, all the carpenters, blacksmiths, ostlers. You know, everyone we saw was dedicated to living up to what is now 244 years of tradition. And most importantly, about all of us here in this room, we enjoy the great taste we always associate with a Jameson whiskey. And it always comes back to the little green bottle right here. What's filled inside it, written down the front, right there on the label for us, and the guys we see up on the neck and down on the base. And now to join us here at Bow Street, guys, you can all call yourselves barrelmen. Very dramatic ending, isn't it? Jesus Christ, it really builds up as it goes along. Nice guys, honestly jump on whatever test suits you best, no worries either way. So you know, we'll start with all the ingredient side of things. We're going to work across the maturation, and by the time we're finished, we'll have shown how we actually go and produce a bottle of Jameson. And like I was saying at the very start, this room just sets the scene really nicely. We'll be able to then pinpoint the differences between the different types that we end up drinking in the next room. So I suppose as we go through this, guys, the desks are going to go dark. Then they're going to light up and turn as we move across the storyboard. You know, we'll stop, I'll throw a bit of context onto whatever's lighting up. But there is going to be a break at the end of each storyboard. So, you know, if anyone has questions or, you know, wants me to explain something in a bit more detail, feel free to shout it out and I'll happily do so. There's no more here, so the lights are going to go down. But up top around here, guys, in Jameson now, they're thinking of whiskey making as a combination of science and art. So the makers are overseeing several processes when it comes to making each and every bottle of Jameson. So beginning here, we're preparing ingredients. And one of the great things about County Cork, where the Middleton Distillery is located, it's near 2 things you need to make a great tasting whiskey. So the first of those is pure, clear water. Now the word whiskey stems from the Irish term Ishkavaha, which translates there to water of life. And this Dungourney River, flowing through the Middleton Distillery, is seen as like the life source of the whiskey making operation. The second thing we need then is barley. So barley is sourced within 100 miles of the distillery, and then we're going to import a maize or a corn from France. Just due to Ireland's climate, we can't really grow enough of our own here to meet the demand that we actually need. And then you've got Jameson. So Jameson is one of the few whiskies produced around the world using two types of barley. So firstly, we've got unmalted barley, which essentially comes straight from the field, goes straight into production. It's still intact, it's very hard, but using this gives Jameson creamy, silky texture, hint of spice on the tongue too. Second type of barley that we're then going to use is known as malted barley. Now, malted barley is very different. It's produced in the malt house. So what happens here is barley is going to get soaked and then stored in warm, humid conditions for up to about 5 days. And this is so germination begins. And really what we're trying to do, we're trying to trick that barley into thinking it's the springtime, so it produces the sugars and the enzymes we're going to need down the line in that process. Barley then gets dried, germination stops, leaves behind all the sugars ready for us to use, and that's a malt, just dried, germinated barley. So when Jameson produced whiskey in Bow Street, we would use traditional malting houses. Even if we take the first glance at the desk guides, right in the very centre of them, we've repurposed a few of the ceramic malting tiles we would have used for the process. There's a small bit of heat coming off them, nothing too crazy now. But back in the day, you would have these vast hallways filled to the brim with such tiling, serious heat coming out of them for that drying process. Just to summarise then that whole barley situation as well that we see. So here in Ireland, we absolutely love unmalted barley. You know, if you ever drink a Jameson or an Irish whiskey in general and get the peppery spice on the side and the back of the tongue, that's what's going on there, the unmalted barley influence. Malted barley then gives you more of like a sweet, like a cereal biscuity sweetness to your whiskies, you might say. And we're going to use both of those two types. To be honest with you, the main takeaway from the whole barley situation is we just dry ours with warm, clear air. So you might find some people up in Scotland or over on the west coast of Ireland where I'm from, they may choose to burn like a peat or a turf when kilning their barley. That's what's giving some of those whiskies the more earthy flavour that we might be associating with them. Back to us though, what we're going to do now, we're going to mill our grain into a flour-like substance. It just gets known as grist. It's a really fine powder, gets added to water and heated, and that's going to form a mash. We then filter this mash, connect to what's called the liquid wort, and then we're going to add yeast. So yeast, you know, it just gets dropped in here, begins to consume all the sugars, all the enzymes present, produces CO2, but much more importantly, of course, we also produce alcohol here at this stage. Process gets known as fermentation, and in the grand scheme of things there, guys, very important step, we've actually gone and we've made alcohol. Now, one thing the board just doesn't mention, and I feel like it's relatively important for us here, is the alcohol we've made at this point is more along the lines of a beer. So it's a beer-like substance, and it gets the name the wash. Sits at around maybe 10% or like 20 proof if we operate in proof. And what I always say is, you know, if we've ever been to a brewery before, it's going to be a fairly similar process up to this stage right here in terms of actually making that alcohol. Now, in a minute, we're going to show how we actually turned it into a bottle of Jameson, moving through distillation and maturation. But so far, from the first storyboard, are we all doing okay? Okay, guys, you probably hear it getting thrown around a lot. It's going to be distillation. And these three things lit up here are 3 copper pot stills. So say, through numerous trials, numerous tastings, Jameson would have developed a signature triple distillation method, and we're still using it to this day. So it kicks off here in what's known as the wash still, contains the wash made with the malted and the unmalted barley. Gets heated, and as it begins to boil, the vapours we see rising are very high in alcohol. So they escape out through the neck, but their freedom is really short-lived as they pass through a condenser and then get returned as a liquid distillate. And after a couple of hours, the process of heating is stopped, and what's left behind here in the first still is just the main body of water. We're then ready for distillation number 2. Takes place in what is called the fade still. And really guys, the same thing is happening here, but at this point, the distillate, it's getting much closer to where we want it to be. It's not quite smooth enough just yet though. So Jameson found that distilling 3 times, you'll make whiskey almost twice as smooth, brings us to our third, final stop of the spirit still. Third distillation takes place there. And what we've done using 3 copper pot stills with malted and unmalted barley is make pot still whiskey. And that right there is like a quintessential style of Irish whiskey making. Down below in Milton though, they're going to make a second whiskey. It's just known as grain whiskey, uses the malt barley and the maize we get in from France. Just gets distilled to a more modern, more efficient process known as column still distillation. Now, there's a lot of talking for me in the centre there, guys. Just to bring that all together, what Jameson are really going to do is they're going to blend together both of those two whiskey styles in different proportions to make the different products that we know. So, general rule of thumb, almost all the Jamesons that we drink will contain both of those two styles right there. Now, they're very different from each other. We're going to see them in action here on the desk. We've got pot still, column still atomizers. I would say grab a bit of white card, go for the pot still first, give it a spray on, give it a smell, see what you reckon. Go for it, why not? To round this off, it's going to be mature in the whiskey. So we use two types of casks. We've got bourbon barrels coming in from the USA. We've got sherry butts coming in from Perez, Spain. The main takeaway from this whole board really, guys, is the casks we use were previously used for bourbons and previously used for sherries. And that's where we're going to get a lot of our sweet profiles out of with the Jameson style whiskey. So, like even on the desk there, we've got the bourbon, we've got the sherry. You know, feel free to pop open the lids on them. You know, get your nose in, smell the wood, whatever suits you best. And then we soak in whatever was in the cask previously into our whiskey. So that's why it's important just to know they've been previously used for bourbons and the sherry types. So the final step then, guys, literally last piece of the puzzle, down to the end, you get the spirit from this side, you get the cask, you just pour it in, and then you just leave it alone. So in Ireland, legally, we have to mature at a minimum of 3 years. But as years go on, I suppose, a couple of things are going to happen for us. So first things first, we're going to see a colour change. That's the spirit mingles with wood, picks up on some of its characteristics. Also, we're going to see a decrease or a drop off in volume. So Jameson are losing 2% of their whiskey every year to evaporation. Gets known in the industry as the Angel's Share. It's a good name, alright, to be fair, good. But 2%, out of context, you know, 2% doesn't sound like a lot. 2% for Jameson is just shy of 50,000 bottles every day. Lots of evaporation. Yes, about 49, so give or take there, 50,000 lost every day. But once it's mature, then you know we'll finally start the whole blending process, and then right down at the end we'll bottle it and we'll pour it into a glass and drink it. So, in a nutshell, start to finish, that's how we make bottles of Jameson. You know, with a few key steps as we go along. But to be fair, the main variations we're going to see in the taste room with the ones we end up drinking, probably going to come here at maturation. You know, different blends or different aging cycles. But what we'll do is we'll talk more about it either way when we have the whiskey laid out there in front of us in that next room. So we do a full circle around there, guys. Make sure we'll all get whiskey then in front of us. Fair play to you, nice one. So the first one that we have, the centre one, is the Jameson Original. So when it comes to that one there now, to be fair, the green bottle, like I was saying at the start, fairly hard to get away from that one. It's kind of all around the world. The one on the left hand side is the Jameson Crested. Has anyone tried the Crested style before? No. Yes, it's nice. Where did you travel, man? Just out of curiosity. Back at home in Croatia, was it?
Here actually, in Dublin, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Because it's a hard one to find, so I'm always curious. And then the black barrel on the right. Have you tried that one before? Yes, nice. That's my favourite one now.
That's my favourite.
It's your favourite too? If you like a bourbon style of whiskey, it's the closest thing Jameson-wise that we're going to get to that. So, look, they're all very different from each other. What I always suggest, if you just take in a small drop of water before we get going, guys, just cleanse off the palate ever so slightly. And then we're going to go for the centre glass. So, the middle glass is the Jameson Original. So, just pick up the middle one. And we'll analyze it just for like 30 seconds. So tilt to a small angle in your fingers and just almost like circulate it through them for a few seconds. Just kind of run it through. We just want to give a coating to the inside of the glass, to be fair. And then once you've done that, bring it to the flat, hold it up there to the light by the ceiling, and you should almost get like this film or this residue forms around the inside. So if anyone's into their wines, you'll be probably familiar with that legs term running down the side of the glass. So here in Ireland, you might hear the whiskey ones being referred to as the tiers. So the general rule of thumb, if those drops are thin and they're fast, you have a very light-bodied whiskey. If they're thick and slow, more full-bodied. And full-bodied meaning it'll really coat your palate when you swallow it down. As a point of reference, Jameson Original is like a medium bodied. It's right there in the middle, so it's a good one to compare back to with the others. If you want to give it a smell, take it on the nose, give it a try. It's going to be quite intense, probably on your nostrils to be fair. I know this is going to sound counterintuitive now, but if you go nose in and leave your mouth open and then inhale, like that, you can almost kind of taste it a bit better down the back of your throat, a bit more vanilla, kind of fruity sweetness comes through. Yeah, a bit better. It's definitely less intense on your nose anyways. Changes it up ever so slightly. The spice goes more so when we actually drink it, when we take it in. This Jameson Original is matured 4 to 7 years. So like I was saying, legally in Ireland, minimum of 3 years. But this is the youngest one we have. It's 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old whiskey brought in there together. So when we do take it in, I would suggest maybe just kind of hold it on the tongue for like 1 or 2 seconds. That's absolutely loads. And then swallow it down from there, and we'll see how we go. But in our own time, we might as well give it a try, take it in, hold on to it, see how we go. Triple distilling the whiskey is not a legal requirement here in Ireland. It's almost like what I would call like an unwritten rule. Just all Irish whiskies tend to do it. So, you know, not an obligation, but it gives you that lovely kind of smooth product then at the end. So, you know, if you drink a Jameson, like lots of people will drink it by itself, or a bit of ice or a bit of water, it goes down lovely. You know, it goes down really nicely. I'm sure we probably gave the lemonade a try as well, the Jameson orange and lemonade mixed in, or even the Jameson ginger ale and lime. We all give them ones a go, a few of us probably did. Like, they're all great mixer styles as well. I think that's why Jameson's been so successful. Like, you know, you can mix it in, you can drink it by itself, bit of ice, bit of water. My personal preference is probably the Irish coffee. Have we all tried Irish coffee before? No? Oh, guys, come on now. If you're going to do anything during your time in Dublin, it's whiskey, coffee, and like cream on top. It's fantastic. It's really good. You can't go wrong. So start your Saturday morning tomorrow with one of those, and you'll have a great weekend. You'll be happy out. It's really good. It's really good. Does anyone else mix it with anything? Just out of curiosity when you're having it at home? I'm always curious to hear if there's any funny ones. I've heard a few strange ones in the past. Pickle juice being one of them. I think that must be a States thing or something. Yeah, it's not really a thing here now, I must say. Or those green tea shots as well. Had a few things about those peach snaps. Yeah, they're a bit more popular. The pickleback shots have not caught on here at all. So if you're in the pubs in Dublin and order one of those, they're probably just going to look at you funny and be like, "What do you mean?" But in general, like, no real wrong ways to go about it, I must say. You can't really go too far wrong. My one recommendation here when you're drinking in Dublin is if you ask for a whiskey Coke, they're probably not going to go for Jameson. So you want to specify that you want Jameson Coke. If you do mix it with Coke, they'll usually probably just reach for like a Jack Daniels or something. So if you do want Jameson Coke, be sure you say it. Other than that, works with absolutely everything. You can't go wrong. Small drop of water, take it in, cleanse off that palate. We're going to go for the next one, which is the Jameson Crested. Now, I'm always curious if people have had this one in particular, because it's really hard one to find. So, what I'll do is, if you pick up the one on the left-hand side there, guys, and just give it a smell straight away. This one uses primarily sherry cask influenced whiskey. So, mainly sherry cask influence, small bourbon contribution. So on the nose, it'll probably smell along the lines of the sherry butt from the roaster room, that kind of fruity note, dried, ripe fruits coming off of it. In terms of maturation as well, it'll actually get matured 7 to 10 years. So a bit longer again. So we started with 4 to 7, we've now jumped to 7 to 10. And I see a few of us checking out the, yes sir?
To get sherry and bourbon, do you change or put it in different barrels, do you?
Oh, good question. No, what we do is we'll mature independently. So I suppose not to bore you now, but the pot still whiskey will just go into the sherry casks, or they'll only take pot still is probably a better way of phrasing it. The bourbon barrels will take pot still and grain style. So at any given time, any Jameson really is going to be a blend of 3 different types. Pot still from sherry, pot still from bourbon, and grain style. So like they'll mature it independently, then throw it into the huge vats, and then blend it and bottle it from there. So it doesn't go from one to the next, it'll stay like in all the casks, and then the blending process will determine what we kind of end up on here. So to give or take about 75% or 3/4 from the sherry cask with this one, small bourbon contribution on it. When we do take it in, guys, I would say maybe just give it like the good 2 seconds. You know, do hold it on the tongue for the good 2. It's matured slightly longer, so you might as well just leave it linger and then swallow it down. I think what I also meant to say there, this for Jameson is a full-bodied whiskey, so it'll be a bit thicker, a bit more syrupy, you might say. A bit of a thicker coating of the palate.
Okay.
Bit thicker.
Yeah.
This for Jameson is probably like as full bodied as we'd get. So like those droplets rolling down the side, they'll be thick, slow. They'll even take a minute or 2 to actually form almost.
Alcohol content and all the same?
Exact same. 80 proof for 40% for us here. All the same across the board, for sure. What do we think of that one out of curiosity? Do we like it? Yes, nice. Pretty good, pretty nice. Yeah, nice up top, pretty good.
Slowly coming in, so it's nice.
Yeah, kind of. So this one, like we're saying there, there's more pot still whiskey in this one, so there'll be a bit more going on at like the back of the palate, really. Like the front of the palate, you'll get that kind of sherry, fruity note, you know, that small kind of bit of ripe fruit. There is a small bourbon contribution as well, so if anyone gets like the vanilla or the caramel in towards the end, it is in there. It's just not the dominant flavor profile in it. The only issue with this now is sherry butts are very hard to source. You know, there's really kind of a limited supply of them these days. So Jameson is relatively limited to where this one will go to market. So you'll get this one in like Ireland, of course. It's in the UK. It's moving through Europe now at the moment. It's in Germany. I think it might be in France nowadays, guys, as well. It's up in Canada. The States is a big one to miss out on. I don't think it's in Croatia, guys. And it's definitely not down below, guys, either, I don't think. It's a hard one to find. Like you'll find it in the shops here, of course. A great spot for it as well is the airport as well. You know, if you're passing back through and getting in the airport, like the duty free with Jameson, you're always liable to get a bit of a knockoff on the price there. So be roughly around 40 or 42 euro in the shops downstairs. I was actually talking to a gentleman on one of the tasters earlier, and he said 28 euro. So 28 euro in the airport. So if you do like it, want to bring it home, probably a good shout to try and grab it there, I'd say. First picked up the centre glass. If you pick up the centre glass now again, even if there's nothing in it, and just give it a smell on the nose, it should really almost like amplify the sweet profile of it.
Yeah.
It's good, isn't it? Maple syrup seems to be like the go-to answer for a lot of people.
That's a good too.
Yeah, it's good.
It smells like honey
or
maple syrup.
He did that. I was like, I'm going to throw that one sure, why not? It does show it's cool, like it really changes. Yeah. I always say if they could make a Jameson that tastes like that smells, they'd be onto a winner because they're really, really nice taste profile come off. So far so good. We like that one? Pretty solid. Any questions or further questions thus far? Drop of water, take it in. We're going to go for black barrel now. This one is my personal preference when it comes to the Jameson style. Like I say, closest thing to the bourbon style of whiskey we'll get. To be honest with you, we're using primarily bourbon barrel influenced whiskey, small contribution from the sherry. We've almost flipped the scales on the Crested. When it comes to the black barrel blend though, we get in all different types of bourbon brands. Wild Turkey, Heaven Hills, Four Roses, you know, whatever the cooperages really have in stock. And we'll always char them once with a propane flame. We'll char the inside once. For the black barrel, we double char them. We double flame the casks. So you get a lovely bit of smokiness off of this one as well. So if you give it a smell there, or if you do give it a smell, you know, you'll get the vanillas, the toffees, the caramel notes that we'd associate with bourbon, but also a bit of that like toasty oak coming through as well. Pushes on in terms of maturation too. So like 8 to 12 years with this one. So slightly further on then again. And in terms of being like full-bodied or light-bodied, you know, it'll give you a lovely smooth finish, but it probably won't coat your palate as much as the second one did. So I would say almost like a happy medium between the original and the Crested style. So when you do take it in, 2 seconds is absolutely loads again for this one, guys. You know, there's no point in really holding on to it for too much longer. I take it in, hold it on the tongue, and then see what we think. Double flaming, it does make a difference in terms of it's quite intense on the back of the mouth and the throat initially, but as you kind of sip away on this one, it tends to be a delayed reaction of like a bit of caramel, a bit of toffee on the front of the palate. You sip away on this one, you'll get the sweetness right across. Like you're never going to escape the spiciness, and we're never going to replicate a bourbon, but what we're trying to do is soak out that influence from the bourbon casks and get it into our Irish whiskey style. So like this one, the Black Barrel is absolutely everywhere. You know, wherever we're calling home, we're going to find this one. I'd say outside of the original, it's the most successful. Probably due to the fact that bourbon is such a behemoth of an industry, and like modelling a Jameson off one of those then was always probably bound to be a fair good success. It's also my favourite one. To be honest with you, just sip away on it, a bit of ice, bit of water. Wouldn't really mix that now with anything. You know, I'd probably just leave it alone. In terms of mixing, like of course the original we can mix with anything. The Crested works really well in old-fashioned style cocktails. If you do want to try something cool with it, throw it into an old-fashioned. But the Black Barrel is probably one that I'd just kind of leave by itself and sip away on. It's a good sipper style of whiskey. And like we were saying, same percentage of alcohol all across the board there either way. If you do like stronger whiskey, they do make the Black Barrel at 60% alcohol as well, or like 120 proof. So yeah, there's that version. But these three that we've had, they're all the normal style, all the 40% or 80 proof there.